Hey out everyone out there and internet lands, wholeness and welcome. This is Josh Dippold of Integrating Presence, and today I have Dean Graves joining me. Dean, how's it going today?
It's going great, Josh. Thank you for asking. I hope it's going well for you also.
It is. It's not bad here. No complaints right now.
Good.
So the standard format, and this will be no different. Who is Dean Graves and what does he do?
Well, Dean Graves is my label. Um, I am um, a person, a man, and I am experiencing an incarnation. And in the course of that incarnation, the first two-thirds of my life has been a normal life existence, in participating in most of the chaos that the world um, experiences. And about my somewhere around my 50th year, about my 50th year, I began a process of meditation and spiritual exploration, and that has dominated the last 23 years. And so my objective, the purpose of I do a couple of podcasts and I've written several books, and the purpose of all of that, as well as I teach meditation, have done so for about 20 years, um, is to provide people with truthful information as well as guidance in their own healing from distortions, and which is the process of enlightenment. And through that process, help people experience greater happiness.
I love this notion too, and my fiance in particular as well, about how there's so many distortions, delusions too, and deceptions. But yeah, it's like, especially in spiritual community, there's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas and eagerness and willingness to find a path, be on a path, practice a path, and a lot of teachers too, and especially me included. I invite people for the most part to point out any distortions that I may be propagating, because there are some that are significant, uh, fairly significant, that can get people detracted from where they need to be on the spiritual path. And some I think are more benign, and some maybe might be more insidious, and depending on the origins of them and things behind them as well. This is my feeling. So why don't we just jump in there? What you said about this, since I just mentioned distortions, instead of, I'm also fascinated too about how you got into all this, if you had experiences early on meditating, and then of course we can get back to this, what types of meditation do you do, and things like this, because that's a big part of my path too. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as distortions go, um, what would you call a distortion, or how would you define that, and then how do you get people to identify them, and then um, what would be the term, to counter a distortion, to undo a distortion, to see things, I guess, clearly, with clarity and in a non-distorted manner, seeing things how they actually are.
Okay. Everything that we experience is a distortion. Um, and when I say everything, I mean everything. And the process, we are consciousness. Everything that we experience is consciousness. Consciousness in and of itself is a distortion. Uh, the process of that we are participating in is the evolution of consciousness. The evolution of consciousness is synonymous with the process of enlightenment. Everyone is enlightened to the degree that they have allowed themselves to become enlightened. They, we will continue to surrender distortions as we evolve. The more quickly that we can surrender those distortions, the more quickly we will evolve, more quickly we will progress along the path, the spiritual path. Um, the path is unique to every one of this. We exist within a range of consciousness. That range of consciousness is generally identified as the third density. We are intoxicated with free will. Free will is the perception of separation, and philosophers have argued for centuries about whether we have free will, we don't have free will, yada yada yada. But the choice of being able to turn right or to turn left is the product of free will. Free will is actually, because we perceive ourselves as separate, giving us the opportunity to choose how we follow the path of enlightenment, how we follow the path of consciousness evolution. And so consequently, those who are deeply intoxicated with free will are in the most chaos. Those people that have begun to take control of their path, their evolution, and develop awareness, are able to use that awareness to narrow the wanderings from the path. The more we're in the weeds, the more chaos and pain and suffering we experience. And so consequently, the process becomes evident to us when we have gained enough awareness that we can see more clearly who we are, what we're doing, what our purpose is, and by virtue of that, take control of that. We learn by the process of analogy. We learn by trial and error, by having experiences, and we are designed to experience what we don't like so that we will know what we do like when we encounter it. The distortions, a large number of which are self-imposed, causes us to stay in that state of chaos, and we experience unhappiness as a result of that. We're all motivated to get more of what we like. And what we like differs from person to person, but as we progress along the path, then that difference narrows so that we like the same thing more and more so as we progress far beyond our range of consciousness. That again is the same process, but it is a narrowing of the deviations from the path. And awareness is our tool that we use at this point. Everyone has awareness. Those that remain in chaos, the chaotic stages of our development, have that awareness pointed outside of them. They're trying to manipulate the world in order to conform to their perception of self. And so in that is perpetual chaos, perpetual pain, perpetual suffering, because it, by its very nature, it can't fulfill our needs. And so when we awaken, and awakening is misunderstood topic. Awakening is nothing more than that realization that all the stuff that I've been doing from my life beginning until now isn't working. It's not getting me more of what I like, and I'm not happy. And so that is an awakening. That's it. That's all there is to it. So once you feel that, not think that, but feel that something's got to change, and you realize, well, the only thing I can change is me, then you invert that awareness from outside of yourself, inside of yourself. And that inversion allows you to begin to start throwing these distortions that you have incorporated into your perception of self away, and what is left is incrementally, it is more and more your authentic self. And that authentic self is what allows us to begin to experience less stress, less suffering, and to become more closely aligned with the path that provides us with greater happiness. Happiness results when we experience less stress. Stress, and you had mentioned this in our pre-programming topic, stress is nothing more than not getting more of what we like. We have expectations based upon our experiences. When those expectations are not met, then we experience stress. And that's like getting hit in the head with a 2 before one time. If we keep doing the same thing and we get the same results, which we will, that's suffering because we keep hitting ourselves in the head with a 2 before over and over and over and over. By inverting that awareness, we can become aware of these beliefs, which are all our perception of self is. It's beliefs about who we are. And we can begin to heal what is called the emotional baggage, which is the unresolved lessons that have been brought to us by our life experiences. We get to carry that in the form of emotion. We can heal that emotion, that emotional baggage. As we do that, we have greater awareness because we liberate our vital energy. And energy, the energy is what fuels, it's called intelligent energy. And that's what fuels our awareness. It's the gas that goes into the car, awareness being the tool in the car that gets us there. And so as we do that, we experience greater happiness because happiness is what is left when you reduce stress. Bliss is the absence of stress. You no longer experience stress. And so incrementally, as we progress along this path, we incrementally get happier.
Dean, you said a lot of stuff there, and I'm on board with a lot of it. I wanted to go deeper and clear up a few things too.
Sure.
Um, so the one thing that really kind of or a couple of things right away, that people would self-impose distortions on themselves. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I can list these again if we need to go back and go. So that's curious. Why would anyone want to do that? The other thing that came up was that consciousness itself is a distortion. Is what I think I heard you say too. Everything is a distortion, including consciousness. So that's fascinating too. And then that leads me to go in further of, now this is kind of more maybe for meditation nerds and people
Wait a
really
minute.
digging in. Go ahead.
Nerds?
Well, you know that it used to be a derogatory.
Practitioners. Yeah.
It used to be a pejorative, but now it's actually a compliment. So yes,
Right.
practitioners.
Yeah.
I like practitioners much better too. So,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
but what is self, according to you? You know, what is the definition of self? And I asked this to quite a bunch of spiritual practitioners. You know, define self. What is that? And and then as long as we're on definitions, and you mentioned some of it already, I think we should define some of the really key terms here, not in just what you just said, but overall in general. You know, what is the difference between consciousness, awareness, you know, even attention and mindfulness? These kind of core terms that the territory we're kind of getting into. And then I think that's enough for now. I do want to get into this notion of our wants and our needs and def, de- defining how a lot of people define happiness by, you know, getting their desires fulfilled, you know, until the next one comes up and the next one and the next one. So yeah, we can go into that. So there's plenty thrown out there, and I'll just be quiet and get out of the way and here,
Okay,
I should
well,
say.
you're going to have to guide me some of your questions because you you
Sure,
throw a lot of
absolutely.
questions out
Yeah,
there.
that's a lot. So that was
Um,
just go ahead.
well,
Go ahead. You're going to
let's
start.
treat meditation first. When I am teaching my classes, my meditation classes, I emphasize to people that we simultaneously exist in both the metaphysical world and the physical world. While we remain unaware and don't meditate, then what we experience is the physical world. And I call the physical world the village. That's where we have our experiences. We have experiences for one purpose, and one purpose only is to provide us with the opportunity to become more aware. And in the village are all problems. Our metaphysical existence, that is concurrent and participatory with our physical world experience, I call the guru's cave. When we meditate, when we go into deep meditation, then we are visiting the guru's cave. There are no problems in the guru's cave. And so, consequently, when we develop a meditation practice, we learn to take that feeling of being in the guru's cave with us when we go back into the village. That's mindfulness. When we're able to take that presence of mind, that inwardly directed awareness with us back into the village, same problems exist, but our perspective of those problems dramatically changes, and that is being mindful because our awareness is inside. We are the funnel or the um, experiencer. When we send our awareness outside of us, then we are no longer the experiencer. We are the participant in co-creators of problems. Until people reach that stage of awareness, then they are perpetuating um, their pain and suffering. So, what was another question that you had?
That's beautiful. That defines mindfulness. I love that's a very unique definition of how to define mindfulness, and thank you for that. Now, awareness and consciousness. Let's
Okay.
while we're on defining terms. Yeah.
Okay. Consciousness is all of creation is consciousness. No consciousness exists outside of creation. Creation, the purpose of creation is so that the one independent creator might know itself by experiencing itself. And in order to do that, if you're all that is, then you have great difficulty experiencing yourself. And so the process began, and I won't go into great detail in our conversation because it would take the rest of the afternoon. But the creator created an environment that is called intelligent infinity. He projected, it projected two concepts. One concept was infinity. The parallel concept, but not merging concept, was intelligence, which created the environment for the creator to project the first distortion. The first distortion was free will. And by projecting free will into the environment of intelligent infinity, created the creator as the subject. Originating the real creator is the object, who is outside of creation, projected within this environment the concept of free will, the first distortion, which created the creator as the subject, thereby the creator having its a projection of itself to interact with and observe and learn of itself by virtue of the decisions, opinions, whatever you want to call it, that the creator as the subject um, experienced. The creator as the subject having the same objectives of desiring to know itself by experiencing itself began to create all that we experience as creation. And so the creator is the subject being a distortion, all of creation is a distortion of the one truth that exists, which is all is one. And so consequently, our evolution, we are way down on the scale as far as the evolutionary process. We are intensely intoxicated with free will, and free will acts as an intoxicant because when you take drugs or you do alcohol or whatever, when you're high on some substance, then what it does is it lowers your awareness. And so consequently, considering free will to be an intoxicant, our awareness is very low relative to the originating source. As we began this process, we are experiencing third density, but there's a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth density. The eighth density being the creator as the subject. In seventh density, one of the behaviors that emerged is the inherent characteristics of the creator became delineated. And those inherent characteristics are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. And they are hierarchical in the course of evolution because awareness is the foundation. We are in a beginning stage of building the foundation. You have to have the foundation before you build the walls. You have to have the walls before you build the roof, and so forth. So we are learning awareness. Our task in this range of consciousness is to become aware, and then through the process, becoming awareness. So we will become the first phase inherent characteristic of the creator in order to prepare to move on to fourth density.
This is really fascinating. And I like some of the divinity teachings that I've studied before. This is a really unique take on that, and some of the metaphysics like that. I don't usually get too far into that, although I do follow a lot of this and hear people's systems and how they classify these things, and I find it fairly helpful with it within that mode of understanding. Um, Grab me was this notion of that self, our free will is an intoxicant, and I just keep thinking about here in America, people with presented with like Amazon. Look at Amazon, right? I
Mm-hmm.
could buy all this stuff on Amazon, right? I mean, it's just endless shopping, endless strip malls, And then we can even get into experiences, for people that are like, that have meditative experiences and retreats and on and on and on it goes. I can have this experience, this type of thing. And I think this leads us into this next section about our next topic of definition is self. What is a self? What is your definition of a self? And then I think this is where we can maybe chat a little bit about how identity and identifying with things plays into this notion of this self, of a self, creating a self. What I want to hear your take on it and what you
Okay. Well,
see.
our perception of self is synonymous with our mind. A mind is nothing more, and the self is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs that we have incorporated either consciously or unconsciously. Most of our beliefs we've taken on by virtue of osmosis of our parents' surroundings and so forth. Um, this creates the hierophant. We are designed to create a hierophant. A hierophant is just a false perception of self. It is our identity, and it is synonymous with our ego. You can substitute either of those words for the same thing. Um, this bundle of beliefs begins from the minute that we enter third density. We begin third density. Everyone begins third density in the same condition, which is described as primordial darkness, which simply means we don't know anything. We are experimentees, exploring ourselves. And in order to, if you're a scientist and you're beginning an experiment, you want to create as an experimenter bias free experiment as possible. And that is what we do by beginning in primordial darkness. And we are designed, we have what's a blueprint for how we process thoughts. All of creation has a blueprint of some sort of how they process thoughts. And our blueprint requires us, or it guides us, to create this hierophant. The hierophant is the false perception of self. We, in our identity, we modify this perception of self every time we have an experience. We perceive experiences to be contiguous and linear, but actually, a single thought is a complete experience. We are obligated with every thought to make a decision about that thought. And that decision, very simply, is either it feels good and I like it, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it. That is a complete emotion. There's no emotion other than that. Our experiences are a point in time experience. We are in a condition of being before we process the thought. We process the thought, decide we like it or we don't like it because it feels good or it doesn't feel good. Then we modify our condition of being, our hierophant, our identity, our ego. We modify that after every thought. Just a very minute change. If we like it, then we keep it. If we don't like it, then we probably will keep it also. But what we're supposed to do is that, well, that's not working. I'm going to throw that one out. But until we become adequately aware by inverting this awareness and becoming aware of what it is that we're experiencing, we can't throw it out. We keep popping ourselves in the head with that two before over and over and over, trying to make the world conform to our expectations. This was the teachings of the Stoics in philosophy. Become aware of yourself and be aware that every experience, stress is our teacher. It's bringing us the opportunity to become aware of what about us we need to change. But we don't recognize that as a rule.
Yeah, especially for folks who identify with, I guess, more emotional based beings or feeling based beings instead of thought based beings, if we could put it that way. This notion of mindfulness of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant or unpleasant is really helpful, I found, because
Mm-hmm.
just like you say, the way I put it is that yeah, if we're not, especially if we're not aware that something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither of those, then what the tendency is to grab on to what's pleasant and want more of it, and then get bummed out when it's gone. And then when something's unpleasant, the tendency is to get it away. I don't want any more of it, and I want to protect myself from being in any unpleasant situations or any things that are associated with unpleasantness. And if there isn't really this kind of emotional charge one way or the other, pleasant, unpleasant, then the tendency is just kind of to zone out. This neutrality, it's not very interesting. Sometimes it kind of, I know in my experience, I'll just kind of drift off, or oftentimes it takes, well, I want to look for an emotional charge, and I want to look for something pleasant or unpleasant. So at least I can, you know, get something, hang on to something, or push something away. So the subtlest one, in deep states of meditation, when there isn't a lot of, sometimes when there isn't a lot of pleasantness or unpleasantness, there's more of an equanimity. I guess this can be more seen and known and felt.
Well,
And,
when you
mhm,
surrender your perception of self,
mhm.
then that's very pleasant. That's why meditation feels so good.
Absolutely. And because we're not trying to maintain an identity and we're not really identifying with a lot, especially identifying, in my experience, identifying with a lot of things that I normally identify with on the outside, you know.
Hmm.
I don't think it's hard for a lot of us to let go entirely of identity, but I think it's very helpful. But at least to examine what are we identifying with, you know? Yeah, well, you're
Well,
saying know thyself. Are we identifying with all kinds of things that aren't helpful, or are we at least temporarily identifying with things that are helpful until we can even let go of those as well?
yeah.
Now, the now you do you remember mentioning that consciousness itself is a distortion? What did you mean by that?
Well, the creation itself is a distortion of
I,
the law of one.
And yes, okay, now it makes sense. Going back on what you said about that. Now, Dean, switching gears here just a little bit, perhaps you have this. You've been known to channel the Arcturians. Is that right? Or what is your work with the Arcturians, or what can you say about that?
Well,
This notion, because I'm fascinated by that as well.
uh, Earth has known the population of Earth is known. Earth has been a second chance planet. So all of the population that has been experiencing Earth for the last 75, 76,000 years, which is the tenure of a third density experience and has a beginning and a very definitive end, has failed to graduate from a third density experience elsewhere. And we are an accumulation of 16 different uh, non graduating third density populations from other planets, other uh, solar systems, and so forth. Um, the creation has expanded, our universe within the creation has expanded by groups of 9 stars. Every star is home to an archetype of the creator. Our universe is comprised of the 5 inherent characteristics, all of which are archetypes of the creator, and 4 distortions. One of the distortions is free will. Free will participates in all creations. We also have 3 other um, distortions that are archetypes of the creator that contribute to our experience. One is movement. We perceive ourselves to be in constant movement. We perceive ourselves to be not only free will separated from others, but there is another archetype that intensifies that. And so we perceive ourselves to be separate. The last distortion is a distortion of a distortion, which is unconsciousness. It is our task as we evolve through this system, through this process, as to become aware and consequently overcome that unconsciousness, which is a relatively elementary level progression through our range of consciousness. But we will still be perceiving ourselves in constant motion and perceive ourselves to be extremely separate. But as we progress towards the upper ranges of this density, the density is divided into dimensions. So if you think of a density as a mile, and these dimensions are inches within the mile, you give you that there's more than inches in a mile, but just for concept wise, as we progress towards the upper dimensions of this density, then the authenticity of our distortions diminishes. Our perception of the authenticity of who we are greatly diminishes. We have the opportunity to experience that condition of being in the guru's cave and um, getting a peek behind the curtain of what is yet to come in the next density. So we are surrendering the authenticity of the physical world, which is a concept that is produced by the lowest two densities. The first two densities are considered foundational densities. The first density is inorganic matter. The second density is organic matter, plants and animals. And those two densities are foundational densities because they are necessary for us, third density, to have a physical world experience. We have to have food. We have to have, the accoutrements that are provided that we take from first and second density. And the authenticity of that physical world diminishes. We get peeks behind the curtain when someone does a hallucinogenic, that more often than not, if they are willing to surrender their identity enough, the authenticity of their identity enough, then they almost always will have a good trip. If they're firmly dwelling within their chaotic stage, then they're not going to have a good trip. They're going to have a bad trip because it's a challenge to their perception of who they think they are. And so as we progress, then we get peeks behind the curtain. For example, love. Love is not an experience that we will have in this range of consciousness, but we get peeks behind the curtain and we misunderstand love. Love is not something that we can get, nor is it something that we can give. So when we have felt love, we feel that love because the person or the situation that we are in at the time has allowed us to feel comfortable enough to surrender our false identity. And we feel who we already are. We feel the love that we already are. And that's immutable to everybody. There's no variety in that. When you surrender that identity, you feel your authentic self, and damn, that feels good. But then that identity comes back in. So I need to put the identity up. And we slip back into that experiential chaos.
Beautiful. It's like then the challenge also becomes, moving in and out of the village, right? How do we allow for more of that to happen when we still have to walk around, remember our names, social security numbers, all this yada
Right.
yada basic things, and how do we
Yeah.
let that
You have your papers with you.
yeah, right, exactly. But I don't think how did the Arcturians come into this?
Oh, the
Yeah, sure.
Arcturians are just another 9-star system. And they speak to us. They have long been involved. They're much older 9-star system than what we participate in. Geographically, they're within our galaxy. We are near the fringes of the Milky Way galaxy. They are much more towards the center. Geographically, we would say that they're approximately 2,600 light years away, but actually there's no distance. Distance is erroneous perception that we have because of our limited consciousness level. So they are keen. They have been involved with us for a long time. There are other 9-star systems that also contribute. The Pleiadians, other different 9-star system. I just don't communicate with them. I don't talk. I can. I have chatted with them. I'm not a vocal channel. I don't feel comfortable doing that. My direct communication is more centered to our 9-star system. And, I know where I come from. I know my past lives. I've had, past lives on Earth before. I know who I was and all that kind of stuff. And it is just another perspective that they offer of the same information. They are more, they're didactically oriented. They want to teach, they want to provide us with the information. In the podcast that I do, and one of the things I'm editing is they provided us the schematics for a free energy system that it's really sounds really marvelous. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to build it. But everyone can have their own energy system that is a handheld device that will power your home, power your office, power your car. No longer will we need any dependency on fossil fuels. Um, 3 or 4 of these things can run a whole factory. There's no moving parts, so there's no depletion of resources.
Uh,
Things of that nature.
Dean, the free energy thing is totally fascinating. I followed it for a little bit. What I hear a lot is the people who have discovered these devices by one means or another. Usually what I've been told has happened. I have no firsthand account experience of this. Is they quickly the patents get bought up by rich people or the
Yep.
security state, or if they try to go forward with it themselves, something happens tragically to them a lot of times.
Right.
Or either they get discredited, their reputation gets thrown away, they get threatened, yada yada, on and on and on. So I'm interested. Not you can follow up on that. What I'm really interested in, though, is the I guess we'll throw it back to your meditation journey then too. If there's anything significant and worthwhile to say of when these levels started opening up, how they did, and then also interested in, because I don't channel, and I don't really talk about these higher levels in my own personal experience, but I am fascinated to learn of others, because what I've heard too is if people do traditional channeling, sometimes if they just open themselves up to, then they don't. A lot of people don't know what's coming in,
Right. Which is
and
dangerous.
well, yes, and so that's why I don't advocate just doing that type of thing. Now, some people, and I'm imagining or guessing that you're in full conscious awareness when you're in communication. It would just be similar to talking to another human being in a way, or
Yeah.
communicating with
We
it.
yeah we
And
chat.
yeah, exactly.
Literally,
So
we just
yeah.
chat.
Yeah, and then finally, this little group of questions here. Then, how do you discern? Or have you had beings coming to you that cloak themselves as like a being of light, but actually they're not what they're presenting themselves to be, and they actually don't have the greatest of intentions, or there's some kind of other ulterior motives, or just something a little off, or not what they're saying they are.
Yeah, and I went through a period of about 5 years, and I still get visitations, but you can feel the difference. You can feel their energy, and you learn to challenge them. By challenging, I simply say, "Do you come in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator?" And that, in and of itself, is not of as enough of a deterrent to make them go away. But and I've learned over the years that I have a visitor that is still with me, is with me every day, because the stuff that I'm delivering, they don't want me to deliver. They don't want the populace to have the truth because it diminishes their control. And so, and that one of our tasks in this range of consciousness, in addition to becoming awareness, is we have to make a choice. And that choice is, and it's called the choice. The choice is whether we're going to polarize positively or negatively. Positively, we're choosing to be service to others and to align with the Creator's path, direct path. The other is to align negatively, which is service to self. And we have a large population of service to self that is very prominent in control of most of the life experiences that we have. They are there's and that's an indirect path. They are simply additional explorers of creation. They have chosen that path predicated upon fear, but when they choose to separate themselves from their higher self in the positive path, then they choose to diminish, if not eliminate, the sources of energy that we have constantly, the intelligent energy. So they have to replace that. And the place that they can get that replacement is through third density, because we have enough energy to make it worth their while that we're going to give them, number one. But number two, we're foolish enough to give it to them. And the higher densities, we're not giving you our energy. You're crazy. Go away. You know. And so we are the Goldilocks, the right porridge bowl for them to supplement the energy that they need to continue their explorations and um, sustenance within creation, because we need this energy.
It's fascinating too, and then you get notions like the justification of things like, well, humanity isn't responsible enough in their consciousness development. If you give them free energy devices, there's so many bad characters out there. They might, do something destructive with it, or, have retaliation on others that have pulled the wool over their eyes, or what, just myriad reasons of using a free energy device as irresponsible. So I see that on one hand. On the other hand, I see, well, this is ridiculous. We've been, but it also depends on how the free energy is coming about. And I don't understand physics enough to know. Some of the things I've heard have been on the neutron field,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what ramifications there might be of pulling energy out of the ether in one area, and how does that affect the whole, in other places. So that's another thing. But then again, to charge people tons and tons of money for just to heat their home, our basic needs, people have to kind of do things they don't want to do in order just to put a roof over their head. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not big into socialism, but I mean, I don't even know why I'm drawing the comparison, but I think we show up here and then we're expected to kind of slave away our lives or do something we don't want to do in order just to have our basic needs met. That doesn't seem like the most conducive environment to progress consciousness if people have to just do that. Now, the other thing is, then it brings to mind this notion of these dark ones who they have this erroneous um, justification in what they do by saying, "Oh, we're just playing an actor in order to get people into crises and to wake people up and progress their thing by playing the bad guy." Right? We're accelerating your consciousness development by doing what we do. We're actually helping you. And so that to me is such a cognitive dissonance, right?
Right.
Of how that is. And, I don't know how to address that. What would you address? How would you address any of that stuff that I said?
Well, that um, their motivation, they achieve their goal by domination and subjugation, by maintaining ignorance in their subjects and dominating and subjugating. In order to raise your consciousness and to evolve, that requires time, free time. And the way that the cultures of the world have evolved, as it's only within the mid really 20th century that free time was even possible in our recorded history. And so consequently, has been a Sisyphusian experience that we have to push that rock up the hill every day, and that night it's going to roll back down, so we got to do it again. And that keeps us from evolving, not having time to meditate, to contemplate, to explore the self. And so that has been an intentional motivation on the service to self path, as to keep the majority of the population, or all the population, um, in a suppressed, dominated, and subjugated role. So, and that is changing. That is going to change. The free energy is part of that. we have, as a population, a large portion of the population we began our experiences on the planet Zenoa, which is now called Venus. And we didn't have that was a productive third density experience over and over and over for billions of years. And then we were the last third density experience. We blew the atmosphere off the planet because of the service to self involvement. We began another third density experience on Maldek, and we had an even worse experience. We blew the whole planet up, and the asteroid belt that is in our solar system used to be Maldek, used to be our planet. We went to, and after that, the population was in what was described as a knot of fear. And so we went through a long healing period. And part of that healing period was to participate in 3 different species of Bigfoot on Earth. So we had a more second density experience while we were still in third density. And those are all gone now. I understand that they're all gone. And then we tried another experience on Mars, and a lot of the structures and anomalies that we have seen on Mars, but we can't figure out what they are. They're the remnants of our occupation there. Then we tried Earth, and Earth was the first time that we successfully completed a third density experience. After it was the 5th try that we were successful in completing the third density experience, but without blowing the planet up. But we did have a very dangerous period about a few thousand years ago, and there was a planet, a continent called Atlantis, and we blew Atlantis up. Roughly, it sunk. The last of it sunk beneath the waves about 8441 BC, and so that was again a very dangerous period. But we were able to finish the entire experience successfully. That experience ended in February of 2016, and the residual third density population will live out their lives. We're not going to evaporate off the earth, or what do you call it? When you just rapture. Thank you. Yes, we're not going to rapture. We're not going up to heaven or anything like that. As we finish our lives, then if we've not met the curriculum for graduation to 4th density, then we will relocate to another planet that is being prepared within the solar system to begin another third density experience. The Earth itself, before, has become a 4th density planet. And the overwhelming majority of the children that have been born since roughly 2005 are 4th density children. All the ADHD and all of the autism and all of that, these are advanced souls. These are 4th density children that are having great difficulty dealing with the third density lower consciousness and vibration. But as they mature and reach that age of assuming responsibility, then the population will dramatically change, and we will begin a 4th density experience, positive experience on Earth. Mars has long been a 4th density negative experience. It is very populated with 4th density negative. Venus is populated by a single 5th density entity. As you evolve through the service to self path, then your path becomes very myopic, and you have great power, but you don't want anybody around. You want your subjects, your minions, within control range, but not immediately with you. And so, we've had these negative influences, and almost all of the UFOs that we see are 4th density negative, because their intent, their purpose is to instill fear. And that's how they control us, the fear.
It is. If it's not breads and circuses, right? Like we were talking earlier a little bit. Yeah, fear is the mind killer, as the classic Dune says. Go. It's just and feeling it. We'll wrap up here in a little bit.
Okay.
Feeling fear. It's that cliche old saying, "Nothing to fear but fear itself," and there really is no need to fear any emotion that I feel, because it's when fear comes in, one of the experiences of fear for me was, or is, if it takes a lot to make me afraid these days.
Hmm.
But it's just this, the feeling in the body of it, is extremely unpleasant.
Right.
And so a lot of people will just do whatever they can to not feel that,
Well,
and
that's the primary hindrance to our evolution in surrendering this false hierophant, because this hierophant is who I think I am, and if I'm not who I think I am, then who the hell am I? And that's scary for most people.
that's right. And when we really start investigating the nature of reality, if there's not a lot of healthy stability there, start deconstructing things. I mean, it can get, I know in my experience, it's got really hairy, really quick, really frightening, dark awakenings, these type of things. So, yeah, that stability is needed, I feel, for some so they can go into these investigating the nature of reality, and it's not what we think it is usually
No,
before
it's
we
not.
start waking up. Yeah. Well, Dean, this has been a fascinating topic and conversation. Very grateful to have you here.
Well,
Enjoyed
thank you.
this tremendously. Would you like to tell folks how they can get in touch with you, how they can buy your books, if you have events coming up? Anything else you'd like to draw people's attention to with your work, and then also, the last words you'd like to leave with us. What kind of message, other than what you've mentioned this time, would you like to leave folks with?
Sure. Yeah, I have three books that are self-published. They're all available on Amazon, depending on where you are in your process. The one I would recommend that you start with, if you have not started the process, is called Enlightenment, Plain and Simple. It has some easy to use processes that will help expedite your development of a meditation practice, as well as further explanations of meditation itself. The identity model that we talked about before is it specifically deals with the hierophant and how the hierophant manifests into behaviors, mostly what would things that would be considered to be mental health issues. And I wrote that for mental health professionals, but it's simple, it's easy to read, anybody can do it. It has three processes in the back that are extremely helpful. They were very helpful to me in beginning my process as far as healing from this emotional baggage. And I highly recommend that I give my counseling patients these exercises to do, and I use it in the course of the processes as well. I have another book called Edifying Children of a Lesser God, which is an introduction to more of the metaphysical things that we talked about today. I have my compendium book, which incorporates all of this and much, much more. It really is a compendium of all that I've learned so far. Is being commercially published next year through John Hunt Publishing, and it is available for pre-order now. They haven't released it yet. They have to coordinate all the distributors and all that kind of stuff, but they can pre-order that, and there are some synopses that they can read on the John Hunt Publishing website. The Chatting with the Arcturians is the current um, podcast that I'm doing, and that's an ongoing process. That's where we're getting the information about the free energy and some other devices, as well as their perspectives on our experience and the condition of the earth and so forth. And that's fascinating. We just chat. It's a very casual chat. And my significant other is my channel, Um, she talks, allows the Arcturians to talk to them just like we were talking. We've been talking through this podcast. And I have another podcast called Simple Enlightenment, which is all the information that we've been talking about. And it's a course of study. So I recommend people go to the beginning episode and just follow it through because it builds one upon the other as they go through. As far as events, I don't have any events planned. I'm busy doing the podcast. It's keeping me busy, and I'm working on a fifth book as well.
Well, beautiful, Dean. I think we'll leave it there. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed our chat very much.
Bye now.
Bye bye.